All right. Well, the whole crew is back finally after everything that's been going on, and we got episode 19 of Wrestling Unwrapped. Oh, I'm sorry. Damn it. I'm confusing myself. Whatever. Well, yeah, you know what? And you guys were on mute on accident again because I thought I was just doing this. You guys started talking, so that's always wonderful. You know what? Shit, we gotta restart this thing. Fuck.
No, we don't. Let it run.
Well, I was just basically talking to myself the entire time while y'all were. This is gonna sound awkward to everybody else.
Put us on Botchamania, Matthew.
Okay, this is episode 19 of Wrestling Unwrapped, and Harry and Patrick are doing WWE Money in the Bank 2011 because Patrick was there live, and we're going to start this show right after this.
Money, 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 money.
Alright, guys, take it away.
Patrick, should we explain why we're caught laughing in the background during our intro? And you'll have to excuse Patrick. He swallowed a bunch of bricks for lunch.
Yeah, sure, we'll go with that.
Those damn independent shows, man, they'll get you every time.
Yes, it had absolutely nothing to do with watching BJ Hyde trying to kill Sugar Dunkerton.
Actually, it's funny that you bring that up. Sugar talked about that on his Facebook. Apparently, he took the bump on the bar, he rolled off, and caught his arm on a bottle on the floor after taking that bump. So it wasn't anything DJ did.
I can 100% confirm that they were trying to pick glass out of his arm after the match.
Apparently, I forget, somebody, I want to say it might have been like Aaron Epic or something, actually could put his thumb in Sugar's arm. It was disgusting. But that's Freelance versus CZW. That's another show at another time.
Exactly.
Why don't we talk about...
And also takes place in Chicago.
Right. Well, why don't we talk about the show we're actually covering tonight? And let's introduce ourselves to the people at home.
Oh, yeah, we may want to do that. Welcome to Wrestling Unwrapped. He's Harry Broadhurst. I'm Patrick Ketza, although we kind of sound a little closer to each other today more than ever, considering my voice.
Best you've ever sounded.
Yeah, sure. It's just what I need to sound like a chainsaw. Anyway, and yes, we're 1 week short, but we kind of have a good reason why we can't do it on the anniversary. But Harry and I are going to be reviewing the show that takes place 5 years ago next Sunday in the 2011 edition of WWE Money in the Bank, headlined by Submatch.
Well, all right. I mean, I suppose technically you and Sean could have done it on the actual 5-year anniversary next week, but then I wouldn't have gotten to chime in, and that would have been no fun for me.
Damn, we should have done it next week.
And so it begins, or so it continues, I suppose. Speaking of things continuing, what's your early ROH like, Ketza? Do you have Tradition Continues? Because that's what I'm currently working on, and it's actually turning into a pretty decent show.
No, I don't.
Time nor place. All right, we'll talk more about what we're going to do going. We actually know what we're going to do going forward, kind of. We've discussed this recently. But before we go any further here, let's go ahead and get our shout-outs out of the way right now.
Yes, as always, this show is brought to you in partnership, well, okay, not partnership, but as of on the W2M Network, and as always, in partnership with 411media.com. And
Oh, don't forget, you can also listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud. We're working on Spotify, I think.
No, we're not.
That's a callback to last week's episode for people who actually listen. Thanks for ruining it. In addition...
I'll just go ahead and tell you, no, we're not.
In addition, Wrestling Unwrapped is sponsored by the Madhouse Toy Chest, stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest, easy for me to say. If you are a fan of anything professional wrestling, DVDs, action figures, t-shirts, books, magazines, pretty much anything you can think of wrestling related, you can find it inside of Jason Kunkel's Madhouse Toy Chest. That is stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest. If you mention that you heard this advertisement here on Wrestling Unwrapped, he'll throw in a free gift with your purchase. So, last week, Ketza, we kind of covered the 2014 edition of the Royal Rumble, and with good reason. I mean, A, it was a very important show, and B, because one of your co-hosts was there, that being myself. The show was in Pittsburgh. I live about an hour and 15 minutes from. Just so happened it worked out. I was able to go to the show. I didn't have great seats or anything, but I was there, and that's all that matters. So continuing with that theme, we're going to do the first ever Wrestling Unwrapped review for myself and yourself. This is a show we have previously covered, the two of us. But this will be all new content for you right here on the W2M Network. Why don't we tell them why we're redoing the 2011 Money in the Bank, Patrick?
I think we've kind of covered it already, because it just so happens that it happened to be the day after my 20th birthday, and it happened to take place in Chicago, and, there's that whole thing of the main event being, CM Punk versus John Cena, and, of course, I was also there myself. And with next Sunday legitimately to the day being the 5th anniversary, we decided for Harry and I to be able to do this, to do it tonight, since Harry will be calling his show next week and won't be on Hulu.
Yes, I will be personas non appearance next week.
Gesundheit.
Waka waka. All right, stall for a few moments. I'm looking.
Okay, whatever. So yes, this would have been July the 17th, 2011, from the Allstate Arena in Chicago, Illinois. Attendance was somewhere in the neighborhood of 12,000, getting all that stuff out of the way. And yes, it is headlined by, possibly at the time, one of the most important matches of CM Punk versus WWE Champion John Cena. And the stipulation added that if John Cena loses, he'll be fired, because if CM Punk wins on the last night of his contract, he's walking out with the belt.
Because that makes sense.
Sorry. What?
Well, as I said in the preview, because that makes sense.
Well, I mean, it does make sense. Unfortunately, what actually happened makes jack all for sense.
Well, allow me to take you back 6 years prior.
To 2005.
And I'm ready when you are when it comes to the results. But allow me to take you back 6 years prior. This is basically the WWE's attempt at recreating the Summer of Punk and Ring of Honor.
Oh, okay. So now I see where you're going with that.
Needless to say, Sapolsky was significantly better at it than the creative staff that Vince had working for him. So to be fair, there's something to be said for too many cooks in the kitchen, whereas Sapolsky had, himself booking.
Too many cooks, too many cooks.
Or maybe just Vince trying to outsmart himself.
Sure.
To be fair, this is also the same company that blew the Invasion, which reminds me, we should totally cover that show at some point.
No, we shouldn't.
Yes, we should.
Actually, that show wasn't that bad. It was what happens after that show.
Okay,
that's why I'm saying I'm saying we should cover that show. It's actually not a bad show. Plus, it happens in Cleveland, and I happen to know somebody who was there.
Well, That's for a different time.
I'm ready when you are.
For this particular time, as we always do, to run down the 6, unless for some reason you have the 7 matches on this card. Here's Harry.
Well, mine's a pay-per-view copy of the show, so no, I don't have the pre-show match.
Thank God.
To be fair, you're not missing much. It's David Otunga and Michael McGillicuddy, Axel Cuddy,
Oh boy,
against Santino Marella and Vladimir Kozlov.
that sounds
Santino and
horrible.
Kozlov win.
If I'm not mistaken, don't they retain the tag team titles?
I don't friggin' know. Who cares?
It's very rare that the bathroom break match happens on the pre-show. Anywho.
Oh, no. Trust me, we get a bathroom break match even on the main show. Actually, we get 2 in a row.
Well, I disagree, and we'll talk about that during the course of the contest. But let's talk about the actual matches that do happen. As Patrick mentioned, we are in the All-State Arena. It is July 17th, 2011. These are your results for Money in the Bank. Daniel Bryan wins the 8-man SmackDown Money in the Bank ladder match, retrieving the briefcase at 24-26.
Because who doesn't love a ladder Money in the Bank ladder match?
Wait, what now?
Who doesn't love a ladder Money in the Bank ladder match?
All right, I'll remember that. The first time you screw up, jackass.
Okay.
Kelly retains the unified women's title at this point, I think. Yeah, it had been unified earlier in the year, or it might have been in late 2010, actually. Either way, Kelly retains the women's title, the Divas title at the time. Again, whatever. Against Brie Bella with K2 at 4:48. For those who don't know, K2 was her version of the Famouser. Mark Henry pins the Big Show after consecutive death from above splashes. That's what he used to call it. At 5 minutes and 58 seconds. The talking point in that match will be what happens after the match, not so much what happens during.
Pillman!
Alberto Del Rio wins the 8-man ladder match on Raw for the Money in the Bank briefcase. Bite me, Ketza. At 15:51, retrieving the case itself. Some big names in this match get 10 minutes shorter than the SmackDown one. Not that odd. Anywho.
Somehow the Raw one was better.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Longer doesn't always mean better.
We'll talk about that once the show starts, Sean.
In this case, it does.
Christian wins the World Heavyweight Championship, defeating Randy Orton by disqualification. Yes, you heard that correctly, and we will discuss how that came to be at 12:19.
But there was no bad reffing. There was no bad reffing in this match, though.
And in your main event, Chicago-made Punk, Cookie Monster Punk, Crooked Moonsault Punk. You get where I'm going with this, right?
Montgomery Punk.
C. Montgomery Punk. All of the same, pins John Cena to win the WWE Heavyweight Championship on what was his last night in the company, and what was apparently Cena's last night in the company as well. Dun, dun, dun. At 33 minutes and 43 seconds, clocking in at one of the longest non-Royal Rumble matches of the year. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the longest non-Royal Rumble match of the year in the WWE on pay-per-view.
Aaron, I'll have a factoid for you that may surprise you, and I'm pretty sure it's correct, but I'll have it for when we get to that match.
So, Patrick, let me ask you a question.
Oh, boy.
What happens when it was the best of times and the Wild West of times? What happens when all the ingredients come together to make for one of the best WWE pay-per-views in recent memory? Let's find out. This is Wrestling Unwrapped, Money in the Bank 2011.
part deux.
Right.
Or redux. Yes.
Redo. Yes.
Yeah,
Let's go
redux.
full French. Let's go full French Canadian with it. Redo.
I love how y'all keep referencing the other thing y'all used to do when nobody else can hear it.
I know. Let us have our fun, Sean.
I'm just saying, you say this, and then nobody can go back and listen to the first time you did it. So, you know.
It's still real life, damn it.
Moving on. So,
that was worth it.
Off is Kane, Sinbachi, Wade Barrett, Cody Rhodes, Daniel Bryan, Justin Gabriel, Heath Slater, and Sheamus. Because
Time out. Did you just call him Sinbachi?
No, of course not.
Because that would mean without Botch, and this dude was like the anti-Sinbachi. This dude was Cone Botchy.
That's true.
Oh wait, we're on to the good Sin Cara?
No, this is the bad Sin Cara. This
No.
would be Cone Botchy with Botches.
Yeah, but like,
This
sin
much.
in Spanish means without. So that means he would be without botch.
Oh, okay,
That's
I'm
what
sorry.
Harry was
Con
saying.
Botch.
Yeah.
Con Botch.
This is Con Botchy, not Sin Botchy. He's not Unico yet. Oh, spoiler alert. For the
Anyway.
3 people that didn't know.
Anywho, sorry. Con Botch in the SmackDown Money in the Bank ladder match. Good Lord. Jeez,
I
this
got
is a long show.
I told you I was going to bust your balls after what you did to me during the results. You
Fair
brought this
enough,
on
fair
yourself.
enough. Fair enough. I mean, I'll say this being alive. Everyone and their brother. And I mean, went into this match thinking it was down to pretty much 2 men winning this match.
Cody Rhodes and Wade Barrett.
Hell no, not even close. Well, okay, one of them you're right. The other one, not even close.
There were several people who thought it was going to be Cody Rhodes to set up a long-term feud with Randy Orton.
Okay. No. Everyone and their mother had it down to Wade Barrett or Sheamus. Most took Wade Barrett.
Well, I actually remember doing predictions before this show. I want to say, I don't think Yes Wrestling was a thing yet, but I want to say there was another wrestling page I was on Facebook that I was still doing predictions and stuff.
Yes,
Yes
wasn't
Wrestling
even a thing yet.
Well, yeah. Yes Wrestling wasn't a thing yet, and neither was the Raw Reaction at this point either. So obviously we weren't doing pay-per-view previews. But I specifically remember doing predictions for the show, and I'm almost certain I picked Barrett in this match.
Yeah, which makes the most sense because, like I said, it's like most people took Barrett or Sheamus. The damn sure take the winner. Or if they did, people did it to be ironic.
Well, before we talk about the winner, why don't we talk about how we got to his win? Let's talk about the match itself here, and let's talk about the fact that, all right, what is your grief with this match, Sean?
Huh? It goes too long. There's a lot of Tim taking time to set up things where they're obviously going to a spot. I feel like the Raw one is a lot smoother. Also because there's times where it's obvious they're trying to fill that time that they're given. Obviously you have a nicer story with Daniel Bryan winning, other than Del Rio winning, which I think helps the match in a lot of people's minds and all that stuff. But, having Kane in there and Barrett in there, that seemed like he almost did nothing. Sheamus. There was also a large period where the crowd was not caring.
All right, well, let me touch on 2 things that you just said there as far as Wade Barrett's involvement as well as Sheamus' involvement in this match. Wade Barrett being as uninvolved in this match as he was, with the exception of teasing of the reunion of the trio before the finish, actually made perfect sense to those of us who thought Barrett was winning, because we kind of figured that he wouldn't take a lot of crazy bumps, and everyone else would kind of car crash themselves, allowing Barrett to sneak in and pick up the victory. That was my assessment of this match at the time.
I mean, there's cool spots. Like, I like that 450 that what's his? I can't remember his name now. Gabriel has to do in that little tight window, and Brian with that big drop kick, and a few other things. But I don't know. I just felt like.
And can I point out that?
Go
ahead, Patrick.
I was just going to say, you also have the one really big spot of the match being the powerbomb from the ladder from the ring.
You mean the wellness policy powerbomb?
Yes, exactly. The wellness policy powerbomb.
Yep. I also never watched this. I wasn't watching this show live, so this was like the first time I actually watched the whole pay-per-view all the way through.
All right, using your former coworker at 401's review of this show, and I don't mean the one we usually trash talk about here, the one that you don't care about. I mean
JD
the one.
Dunn?
Yes, I'm actually using JD Dunn's here because I'm using it as kind of a refresher here. I got to watch bits and pieces of the show. I did not get to watch the full show here. He actually talks about several things. And the one thing that he talks about I wanted to bring up to Patrick here, too, is the fact that right at the very end, after the finish goes down and Brian retrieves the briefcase, and we'll talk about Brian grabbing the case here in a few moments and what it meant for the company going forward. Very few people called that one. I'm quoting JD here. Very few people called that one. I was sure it was going to be Cody for an Orton versus Rhodes feud. That said, I am a firm believer in the theory that the average fan wants to cheer a good performer, but they're hesitant when they know the guy isn't going anywhere.
It almost sounds like he's predicting the Daniel Bryan versus the World storyline up 3 years early.
Well, the thing about it is that a lot of people kind of figured when Bryan was the one who won this match, and now we can talk about the winner and how it went down. Bryan, I do believe, knocked Barrett off of the ladder and retrieved the briefcase, if memory serves.
Yes. I think it was down to Barrett, Cody, and Bryan. Barrett tried to sneak up when Bryan had a guillotine, I think, on Cody.
Yeah, Bryan
eliminating Cody, and then Bryan gets Wade Barrett out and ends up pulling down the briefcase.
Cody clotheslines Barrett over, but winds up in Bryan's guillotine on the ladder. Bryan also fights off Barrett and then goes up to retrieve the briefcase at 24 minutes and 23 seconds. We have a 3-second time difference. Close enough. Anywho, the thing that JD mentions here is about the fact that the fans were hesitant to get behind a performer that they don't think that the Office would get behind. There were a lot of people at the time when Bryan won this match, and I remember watching the show and going crazy watching the show. But I also remember thinking, Bryan's going to be the first person to cash in Money in the Bank and lose.
I thought it while I was there that night. I thought I had that exact thought. And I'll say this. Having watched it on the network in the past, I also was not able to re-watch it before today. But the crowd on the network version does not do it justice because of the fact that Chicago had always been a big city for Daniel Bryan. Obviously being part of Ring of Honor for so long, and Chicago being one of the key cities for Ring of Honor. So Chicago had always had a special place for Bryan. So I think that may have played into it a little bit, being that everyone knew that the crowd there was also going to be on Bryan's side, and they were, and they had been any time that he had wrestled, because I believe he won his first WWE title less than a year prior, winning the U.S. title at Night of Champions, which coincidentally was also in Chicago. And the crowd went absolutely nuts then, too. So that may have played into it also, being such a huge pro-Daniel Bryan city. But, obviously, everything would kind of change there, and then Daniel Bryan would make the promise that he would cash in at WrestleMania and would fall about 3 months short.
Well, actually, I kind of want to talk about that because while we're not specifically going to discuss the show in question, because I think there's a time and a place for us to review that show down the line, specifically the picture that came out after it and the young blood movement of the WWE at the time. But let's talk about the fact that Bryan would eventually go on to successfully cash in Money in the Bank here. Sean.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned that at the time you weren't regularly following the pay-per-view product.
I was not regularly following. This was during a time where this was right after Anaya was born, and we did not have like cable and such. So I was sort of following it on the periphery. I wasn't every day watching things.
So you were like reading the results online and that kind of stuff to keep up with the product.
Exactly, yeah.
All right. As a casual fan back then, what would you say you made of Bryan? I mean, obviously you knew of Bryan's exploits on the independent scene back then, you being the wrestling fan that you are. And in a wrestling hotbed state like Florida, I assume that you were in Florida already at this point, or were you still in Texas?
No, I was in Texas at this point.
Well, even more of a wrestling hotbed state in Texas.
I didn't move until Florida until WrestleMania 28. I moved like a week before WrestleMania 28.
What were your thoughts? What were your thoughts as far as Bryan winning when you read about Bryan winning? Do you remember?
I was surprised. I remember I didn't think he was going to win because I knew that they didn't have a lot of faith in him, and everybody had said, oh, Barrett or Sheamus or basically anyone but Bryan, other than the two core guys, which were jobbers at that point. I think it's even more telling how many of those people in that match are not with the company anymore. Or not actively wrestling.
I was about to say, do you count Bryan being with the company?
Yeah, well, Bryan's obviously with the company, but he's not actively wrestling.
Yeah.
All right, Patrick, how about kind of a live perspective here? You mentioned that you were surprised live, but you said that the reaction on the network version doesn't do the reaction in the arena justice.
It doesn't, and I think kind of a hot opener kind of situation, the crowd went nuts. Like, they went absolutely nuts when Daniel pulled down the contract, and I don't think in the arena, because it kind of built up, I don't think anyone in the crowd actually believed Bryan was going to win until Bryan, legitimately, not even fighting with it, trying to pull it off, but actually pulled the briefcase off. Then the entire crowd just went, oh my God, he actually won. Kind of a situation. But the crowd went absolutely mental. And then they would proceed to kill it with the next two matches.
See, I'm going to agree with you on one of those, but I'm going to disagree with you on the other. And if anybody and nobody has anything else to say here, I suggest we move on to the next match.
Do we have to?
Well, it'll be brief, I promise. Quick and painless, much like the match itself. All right, I don't know about painless, but it's definitely quick. And that is the Divas title match between K-Squared and Brie Bella, or as I've officially dubbed it at this point, the belt for boobs.
Yeah, pretty much. Because that's all it was at this point. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you, Bayley. Even though she's not...
Well, all right, here's the thing. I'm going to give some credit where credit is due. Because this is like this is coming up on the end of Beth Phoenix. This is coming up towards the end of Melina. This is coming up towards the end of Nikki. Back in the time frame where they still had the women's workers on the rosters, they were definitely going more Barbie doll-centric at this time frame, if my memory seems to serve. Because I seem to remember Kelly feuding with Brie Bella. I seem to remember Kelly feuding with... I want to say she may have feuded with Beth Phoenix briefly before Beth left.
This probably would have been in the ballpark of Divas of Doom time.
Beth and Natalya?
Yeah.
Okay, and then that would have been at TLC because I remember Beth being in the picture of the champions. So that would have been Beth getting the women's title off of Kelly. But this right here, this is a nothing match. This is back when we didn't know what kind of workers the Bellas were going to be. And honestly, the answer is they've never really turned into great workers. Nikki's turned into a serviceable worker. Brie was never anything special. It's Brie getting the title opportunity here against Kelly, who, in my opinion, may have been the single most under-equipped Divas champion of all time.
May. I can only think of one that's worse.
I can think of one that was worse, but she was a huge merchandise seller, and that was when it was the women's title.
We're probably thinking of the same one then.
Sable?
Yep. Like, on the money, that true immediately popped into my head.
Yeah, but the difference was that Sable moved a crap ton of merchandise. I honestly don't think Kelly was ever a big merchandise seller. Honestly, I don't think she was ever a big merchandise haver.
Then again, how much merchandise did she really have?
She always had her own stuff. I don't remember her ever having a shirt.
Also, real quick, to kind of divert for about 6 seconds, I don't think Sable has aged a day in the last decade.
Oh, yeah, for real. How did Brock luck into that? He found the ageless woman.
No kidding.
I always thought Sunny was hotter. Moving on.
Not now.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
Woo. Well, of course, that it helps when you do drugs.
100 days sober. Anyway, moving on. So, yeah, K squared ends up winning, I think.
K squared pinged her off of K squared, K2, which was her version of the Famouser. And ironically enough, she's not as good of a worker as Billy Gunn was too. We move on.
Yeah, I'll just say this. The crowd was kind of actually pissed off about this match. Do you want to know why?
That it was happening?
Well, no. But it was a really stupid reason why the crowd was pissed off.
Well, are we going to talk about the Laurinaitis segment that aired right before it then?
No. It happens to be about the fact that why is the bathroom break match the second match on the night? What if we have to go to the bathroom later on?
Well, then luckily for you, our next contest is the Big Show and Mark Henry.
Yes, at least this match has a point, because I know you're going to go into it. Yes, it does have a point. It has a great point. But at the same time, it's Mark Henry versus the Big Show.
Oh, no, I don't disagree with you. I think that this match would have been better off happening on Raw. But that being said, not Raw, and SmackDown, excuse me, because this set up Mark Henry for his run against Randy Orton a little bit later in the year. But that being said, exactly what I just said about this match setting up Henry for his run against Orton later in the year is why this match needed to be on pay-per-view. You needed to have him dominantly establish himself as a force against the world's largest athlete, that he doesn't just beat Big Show, he beats him convincingly and then takes him out after the match.
Phil, man! He Pillmanizes him.
Yes, he does. And it's not a full Pillmanizing. The Pillmanizing was with a kick. Henry actually does a splash.
Oh, well, okay, fair enough. Here, I'll put it this way. We're starting to almost sound like we feel bad for the Big Show. Much like what we talked about last week with Brock and Taker, with Brock and Big Show leading up to Brock and Taker last week when we talked about the 2014 Rumble. Much like that, this week, the Big Show has to put someone over convincingly so that they can move up past him.
Well, you have to look at it this way for Big Show. Big Show's getting paid regardless.
Yeah,
And honestly, when you're a guy the Big Show size that has the knowledge of the business that he does, he understands that eventually it was going to set him up, and this is going to take us once again back into our tables, ladders, and chairs conversation we were just having a bit earlier. Big Show would get his win back against Henry at tables, ladders, and chairs for the SmackDown Heavyweight title before Daniel Bryan would cash in on the Big Show.
And nearly turning Big Show heel for the 67th time when he has one of the shortest World Heavyweight Championship reigns of all time.
Big Show was not a heel. Big Show was a babyface. Daniel Bryan was the heel.
No. I said almost would turn him heel.
Okay, I think 57 is a real lowball number, though, for heel turns. Unless you make 57 heel turn in 2011, because that I would buy as potentially possible.
Sure.
Nothing, really. Sean, your thoughts here?
This was actually decent for being a big guy match. And, you know, they've had actually worse than this on a Raw or on other shows. I thought this was pretty, you know, it sold that whole thing of Mark Henry being angry and him showing his power over Big Show, that he's, you know, he's going to be whooping ass, which he was doing back then, Hall of Pain and all that stuff. So
I actually do believe that this right here may have been the birth of the Hall of Pain. I don't know if it was this one or if he took out Khali before this that led up to the opening of the Hall of Pain. But I know this was right around the time frame that it started. So
yeah, I think
you're right.
This is included in it, because even in the WWE 2K, I think 15 showcase, they do include this match, I believe, in the Hall of Pain storyline. So this is definitely part of it, whether it's the very beginning, which I don't think it is.
I want to say Khali is the start. I want to say Khali is the start, and then Big Show is second.
Possibly. And yes, this would end up leading to Mark Henry winning the World Heavyweight Championship. What?
Jason's in the actual W2M group responding to this, to the post about the show. He's just posting random stuff as we talk about it. It's funny.
Speaking of random facts about this show, we actually kind of skipped over you on one of the matches, Sean. Did you want to chime in anything on K-Squared and Bree?
It's funny because this is when Bree was supposed to be the better wrestler, right? And she's terrible. And of course Kelly's not much better, so yeah. It was so, like it just felt like Bree was just trying to find out anything she could possibly do that didn't have to really be a move.
Anything that required as little wrestling skill as possible.
Exactly.
All right, I realized we accidentally skipped over you while we were discussing and trying to fast forward through that match. Patrick, let's get the live variation here. Were fans there buying what Mark Henry did to the Big Show?
I think most of the fans were asleep. Actually, no. Most of the fans were actually probably still laughing at Mark Henry's dropkick.
Hey, let's see you be 350-plus pounds and throw a drop kick.
Yeah, man, that's no. The fans were asleep from the previous match.
But I mean, yeah, I think by this point the fans were starting to buy what Mark Henry was selling, because I don't know about you guys, but to me this would end up becoming Mark Henry's best work. Far and away. Yes, even over sexual chocolate, before you even bring it up, Harry, because I know you're gonna.
No, I'm not. I'm going to
I don't
agree
know.
with
That
you.
fake retirement promo almost like outdoes half of what he did in this run.
Well, okay, yeah. The retirement promo probably is one step ahead. But Yeah, the crowd was starting to buy what they were selling. I think it did kind of take the pilmanizing on the ankle. I'm still going to call it pilmanizing, even though it wasn't a kick. But I think after that, the crowd kind of started like, oh, okay, this is actually legit. We're really building this guy, finally. It only took almost 10 years. Well, 7. But, you know, and it's fine. But finally, they're doing something good with it. And finally giving him something to do. So, yeah, I would say by this point, after the beatdown, after the match, yeah, fans were starting to buy into Mark Henry, finally.
The only thing that I would say specifically here is that I think the order of the matches kind of hurt them. And that being that this match came right off of that Divas match that nobody cared about. I think if you really wanted to make this match stand out, you could also use it as a cool-down match from the second Money in the Bank match. Because I don't know if I like the two title matches going back-to-back to end the show, and especially off of the finish off of that second title match. Off of that first title match, excuse me.
I was wondering about that. Could you... I would almost say, could you flip the two non-big matches, and by non-big matches I mean the Divas match and this match, could you almost like flip them or throw the Divas match maybe after the Raw ladder match?
I would argue that you could probably put the Divas match after Christian and Orton in order to give the fans a break going into Cena and Punk.
Considering Punk was going to be God in front of that crowd no matter what they put in front of it.
Exactly. Literally speaking, no one gave a about that Divas match here. You could have put it anywhere on the card and not broken up the momentum of the match, especially if you would have had Money in the Bank right after it, or if you would have had the Punk and Cena match right after it. Having it go on second there, honestly, I think hurt the reactions from the fans when you were setting up Mark Henry's major heel push. Because if you have a thoroughly involved crowd there for Henry's actions against Big Show here, I think Henry gets a much better reaction towards what he's doing there, and it builds him up as an even more credible monster than what it did. Now, honestly, they were able to capitalize on Henry's momentum at this time frame anyways. He would end up beating he would end up beating Orton for the heavyweight title at Night of Champions, I believe, in September of this year, and then retaining against Orton at Hell in a Cell in October. So they would take advantage of the momentum that Henry had, but I think you could have gotten him even more momentum coming out of this pay-per-view had you, as you just said, flip-flop those two matches.
Yeah, there's very little doubt, because I do remember, you know, being the night that it was and being the situation that it was and where it was and everything about it, I distinctly remember there were definitely CM Punk chants during the beginning portion of this match. By the end, though, I think they were able to kind of put the kibosh on those, especially, like you said, with the beatdown and everything, and the 2 death from above splashes, and I believe 2 World's Strongest Slams, because Big Show kicks on 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They were able to kind of put the kibosh on that for at least a little while. But the one thing that would happen just being there live is the closer and closer that you would get to the main event, the Punk Cena championship match, the closer you got to that, the almost less of a damn the crowd really did give in the beginning of matches, and it would take the wrestlers almost everything they had to try and win that crowd back over. The Raw Money in the Bank kind of did. Orton and Christian were able to. And then, obviously, all hell breaks loose for the final 45 minutes of this paper. But it would take a hell of a lot from almost every match trying to win that crowd back over. And speaking of the Raw Money in the Bank ladder match, since it seems like are we finished with Big Show and Mark Henry?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm going to discuss this match a little bit more later on, but you'll have to stick around and hear that in our bid finish. But yeah, I'm good for now.
Interesting. So then, our next contest is indeed the Raw Money in the Bank ladder match. It is Rey Mysterio, Kofi Kingston, Alex Riley, Alberto Del Rio, R-Truth, The Miz, Evan Bourne, and Jack Swagger. And you can just smell the lead in this match. I mean, what? What?
I absolutely refuse to put that over. I'm invoking my creative control and saying we move on.
Okay, brother. Okay, brother.
Brother.
Oh man, I had missed not
Hey,
having to hear
creative
that.
control. He brought up creative control. Anyway, so yes, the Raw Money in the Bank, the winner gets the briefcase to go after the WWE Championship, which would kind of ruin Summer of Punk 2, but we'll get to that later. I did actually really like it, and I think a lot of people did, the beginning to this match, where everyone brings a ladder in, and just everyone starts with a ladder in their hands because they're taking them from the ladders set up on the entranceway. And I believe for some weird reason, Kofi Kingston ends up with the smallest ladder. He ended up with like a half of a ladder.
I think that was Truth on purpose because of his
Little
phobia.
Jimmy.
Yeah, he was foreshadowing Little Jimmy.
It was Truth on purpose because he was afraid of ladders. They talked about it in the build towards the pay-per-view.
Yeah, but yes, he was foreshadowing Little Jimmy, all the way back then.
Yeah, I kind of did forget about that.
You're on your way
I
towards
wish you
awesome
didn't.
truth here, Patrick.
I wish you hadn't reminded me of that.
It is what it is.
I know. I mean, there's only a couple major talking points to this one. Obviously, one of the big ones being the airborne off the ladder to the floor onto almost everybody. Because the Miz refuses to take a bump at this point. And not only that, if I'm not mistaken, would this be also one of the matches where he just refuses to catch somebody?
Yeah, I do believe it's Truth actually who's splashed because of Miz.
Well, I know Miz doesn't. I know Miz is not part of the group bump for the airborne, and then R-Truth also goes to do something. I think it's just a plancha from the ring to the floor, and the Miz just almost flat out refuses to catch him, furthering my absolute hatred of Miz. But I'll save that somewhat because he doesn't really play a factor in the end here. It's just, yeah, okay. I mean, this isn't a bad match, and I hope Sean, I know, it might sound like ragging on it compared to the SmackDown one. This isn't a bad match. Yes, it is shorter. I think it's just one of those personal preference between the two of them, which do you like better? I prefer the SmackDown one. Maybe Daniel Bryan winning does have a point to it, but I prefer that one over the Raw one. Probably the ending to this one also doesn't help much, considering everyone crashes and burns.
See, I'm going to disagree with you in the fact that you said Miz doesn't play a factor into this finish, because I would argue that Miz's return to the ring got a very loud, positive reaction from the crowd after he was originally helped out with his knee injury.
Yeah, but then they started booing when they realized that he was going to try to
win.
Yeah.
Well, I also like that they teased Miz winning the match here, given the fact that it plays off the fact that he had just won Money in the Bank the year prior. Because let's not forget, Miz won Money in the Bank in 2010 and then cashed in November of 2010, a couple of nights after. I think it was the night after the Survivor Series to win the title off of Orton on Raw.
And what a title reign he had.
You're letting your hatred of Miz blind you. Anywho, as far as this match goes, me and Sean kind of got into this discussion during the SmackDown one. He prefers this one. I prefer the SmackDown ladder match. I think the SmackDown ladder match had better participants and people that were much able to tell a more coherent story, even though they had more time with which to tell it. Sean, you said you prefer this one.
This had much better as far as fluidity, them doing the spots better, guys that were more athletic. What you think of in a ladder match?
I would agree that the action was more fast and furious in this match, but at the same time, I think the SmackDown one told a better story.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, you know, even though Del Rio was kind of cool then because he still had the car and all that stuff, like, that story of Del Rio's destiny, which that was the only time they really told things well with Del Rio was when he had a destiny. Is everything else was kind of okay. You kind of knew it was Del Rio and maybe another guy. Everybody else they were just there to fill the void. And I can kind of understand why maybe that's what hurts it a bit. But yeah, I just enjoyed the action a bit more, and there wasn't the whole waiting around sometimes to get to the next thing like there was in the Raw day. But again, I think it's like you guys have said, it's about personal preference.
Patrick, you still there?
Oh yeah, I'm here.
I want to get your
rebuttal. I was waiting for you to rebuttal.
Oh, no, he was rebuttaling me. I don't feel the need to counteract his point because we both kind of agree to disagree here. He likes this one more. I like the SmackDown one more. You've mentioned yourself earlier that you preferred the SmackDown one as well, but that being said, it's not to say that this is a bad match. And Del Rio's victory, honestly, was not surprising given the push that he was on. I mean, this is the man who had just earlier in the year won the largest Royal Rumble in the history of the event. So Del Rio's win here was not a huge surprise at the time. As a matter of fact, it was kind of expected. And honestly, I think that might have hurt some of the drama for this match because unlike the SmackDown match where you said it was Cody, where I said it was Cody, others have said it was Sheamus, others have said it was Barrett. Well, JD said it was Cody, I said it was Barrett. But there were multiple people who you could have expected to win that one. It was pretty much a general consensus that Del Rio was walking out with the Raw Money in the Bank briefcase.
Yeah, I think in this one, I would give it like 85%. No, probably more. 90% had said Del Rio. Like 5% had said Miz, and the other 5% was everyone else kind of just being ironic.
Well, the only other person besides Del Rio who I thought might have had an outside chance to win this one was Kofi Kingston. And that would have been just the WWE's way of thanking Kofi for constantly busting his ass in these style of matches.
Yeah. But in this case, it was not to be, as also another rarity would occur in this match, although we wouldn't actually see it. We would see what would cause it, but we wouldn't see the actual thing. Being, at the end of the match here, you get the fight at the top of the ladder between Rey Mysterio and Alberto Del Rio, and possibly the first time it's ever happened here?
No. The feud with Jericho was the first one that I can recall in the WWE.
Okay, so this still would have only been like the second time this had happened.
Second or third.
Yeah, at a max. And that is, Alberto Del Rio actually takes the mask off of Rey Mysterio. We, yet again, don't see Mysterio's face. He covers that up very well. But for probably only the maybe third time ever, we get a maskless Rey Mysterio. And then obviously, go ahead.
I think it was done kind of to set up the Alberto Del Rio Mysterio little mini program that was going to happen as well going forward, and they had a lot of beef going into this match as well. But that being said, once this match happened here and with everything that went down in the main event and then the following pay-per-views afterwards, you kind of took Ray Ray out of the picture, the title picture altogether.
Well, it wouldn't be here that it would be taken out of the picture. It would be roughly 8 days later.
Yeah, because the title tournament starts the next night on Raw, and then the finals are that following Monday.
And then what else also happens on that Raw?
Yeah, I
Because
know.
reasons. Yeah, because reasons.
I know. We'll get to it when we get to the main event. Don't worry.
I know. So, yes, Alberto Del Rio would end up winning the Money in the Bank ladder match, earns a shot for the WWE title whenever he wants, which, I guess, spoiler alert, he would cash in at very next pay-per-view, crashing Cena versus Punk parts after OMG Kevin Nash thought he was dead, LOL, interfered after the match. Because reason.
Something I want to point out here. We're actually forgetting something that Del Rio does on this show as well. We need to talk about that first before we get to SummerSlam.
Well, I think we'll get to that.
It's after this next match.
Well,
Sean, anything else
two
for this
matches
in the
left.
back match?
No?
All right, so then let's move on here. We're going to move on to the SmackDown title match, which is, the World Heavyweight Championship, which is champion Randy Orton defending against Christian. And you know what,
And
Patrick, you gave this match some hate. Like you said yourself that you weren't fond of this match. And the cluster that it turned into, I completely disagree. This match was perfectly booked.
oh no. This match does turn into a cluster, especially at the end. You can't deny that part. But for a good reason. But yes, it does turn into a cluster and a half. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, it just turns into a cluster. Does it not?
No, because it makes perfect sense for what happens.
But it's still a complete cluster with a low blow, spitting in the face, 2 RKOs on the table. And by the way,
you're counting the post-match beatdown in with the match itself. No, what happens in the match makes perfect sense here, because the stipulation going into this match was that Christian did not have to win by only pinfall or submission to become champion. If Randy Orton got himself disqualified, Christian would become champion. Christian purposefully... Could he also win the title by countout? No. Then I don't know what you're talking about.
Think about 1 month prior. How did Christian lose his match for the World Championship?
Oh, referee idiocy.
Yes. So the stipulations work. Christian could win, obviously, by pinfall or submission, or if Randy Orton gets himself disqualified, or if there's a case of questionable referee games, then Christian would also win the World Heavyweight Championship. Because of the fact that at their previous pay-per-view match, Christian lost by his foot breaking the plate of the ropes. Maybe it becomes...
All right, well, let's talk about the fact that this match, the finish of this match here. And I want to specifically give credit to them, actually, for coming up with the finish that they did here. And I know people will consider this a cop-out finish. A lot of people will consider this a word I can't say on this podcast, finish. But... finish?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Here's the thing, though. Given the character of Randy Orton, and given the fact that Christian had kind of turned slimy going into their previous match, the prior month at, what was it, Over the Limit, I want to say? Sounds right. These generic names for these pay-per-views all ran together, but I think it was Over the Limit where his foot was breaking the plane of the rope.
It would have either been Over the Limit or maybe Capital Punishment.
You might be right. It might have been Capital Punishment, actually. Anyways, I was saying, the fact is they had Christian.
Sorry, not to cut you off. It was Capital Punishment. Was the month before.
All right. Well, anyways, just to my point here, it made sense so that they had Christian outsmart Orton and use Orton's temper against him here for the finish. The spitting in Orton's face, which led to the low blow kick, which led to the disqualification. Sean, I want to get your opinion. Oh, we haven't brought Sean in on the match, so I want to get his opinion real quick.
On the Christian Orton?
Yes.
I agree with you, Harry. I really like the way they did this. The entire match is booked so that Christian is trying everything he can legitimately to win. That doesn't happen. So Christian tries, and he tries even at the beginning to get Orton in his head, right? So constantly throughout the match, okay, well, I'm going to try to win. Normally, that doesn't work, so he starts trying to mess with him. He starts trying to get him to do things that he's not supposed to do. He tries to get him counted out. That doesn't happen. He tries to get him, and then he finally gets him disqualified. And yeah, it kind of turns into a cluster. But again, this all works. And I thought that actually the referee was, he did a great job of letting Randy know all these times that, hey, hello, you're about to get yourself disqualified. You better watch it. Like, they really played that up. And I thought the disqualification finish sucks for Christian. Like, it sucked for him as a person, what he's been through, all that stuff. But for the match itself, it made total sense. Looking back on it, because of what happened to him, looking forward, again, it sucks that this is the way he got his second title reign. But, you know.
Well,
and especially also because they got the crowd into the match and everything after they didn't seem too into it at first.
Well,
yeah.
You have to look at the bright side for Christian here, Sean. At least this title reign lasted longer than 2 days.
Or 18 seconds.
Wrong guy.
I just meant in general, but...
The 2-day reference is specifically about the fact that he won the title back at Extreme Rules in April of 2011, and then at the SmackDown taping 2 days later is when he dropped the belt to Orton in the main event of that episode of SmackDown. This right here, he would hold on to the title.
Sorry.
Yes, it did. This right here, he would hold the title for a full month until SummerSlam and their no-holds-barred match, which, again, this match and then the post-match cluster, as Patrick put it, would play perfectly into the setup for their no-holds-barred match at SummerSlam. I have no issue at all with the way this match and then the post-match was booked.
Going back to the point I very, very nearly interrupted Harry on, the 2-day title reign pissed off a lot of people.
Well, technically it is a 5-day title reign in
shut up.
history. Hey, they said it on the show itself, so.
Of course,
it's their show.
Well, of course they're going to claim 5 days because it doesn't air on Tuesday in most countries.
But that's the point, though. To them, it's 5 days.
So what are you going to do for a country where it airs on Thursday?
Well,
because let's not forget, it aired earlier than Friday in other countries. If I'm not mistaken, back then it still aired on Wednesdays in Canada.
And if I'm really not mistaken, America actually has one of the latest airings of it. Only a few countries would air it on Saturday. Almost everybody else was from there Thursday at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But Jason's real quick, Jason is having way too much fun in the comment thread with this, Sean.
Oh, I know.
Hey, you know what? That's cool with me. He's getting other people to get involved with it too.
Okay. The match itself, yes, was very good. Once again, they had to work from kind of underneath with this crowd because at this point the crowd knew what was next. They knew that Cena was next. They were able to get the crowd back onto their side. And like you guys said, it was absolutely Christian work. I'm not, in no way, shape, or form have I said the match was bad. This was a very good match. I don't know what it was about Christian and Orton. They brought out some of the best in each other. Just flat out. The ending to this, well, yes, Goofy makes Christian look like absolute crap, but it 100% makes sense. I'm not denying it. But yes, the match does end up, okay, by the end of the segment, we'll say, it turns into a complete cluster. And, yeah, Christian spitting on Randy Orton. All right, Terry, I got a question for you. I'll openly admit this on the air, even though Harry and possibly Sean already knew this. You said you weren't a fan when I told you that Tessa Blanchard did spit on my dry erase board at Shiver 2 weekends ago. How did you feel about Christian spitting on Randy Orton?
As a pre-planned spot, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's part of the story to get him to...
Wrestlers using bodily fluids to go after fans is something that should never happen in pro wrestling.
Yeah, Sean, there is a reason I'm asking that. Asking, Terry. It goes back to conversations we've had.
Oh, no, I agree with him, too. The wrestlers shouldn't... wrestlers, you can yell at the fans. I mean, that's one thing we were taught as well as a wrestler, and this is back when we were family friendly, but the fans necessarily weren't. To us, the wrestlers, and they told us, it doesn't matter what they yell, what they say, you can yell back at them, but don't ever touch them and don't ever spit at them or anything like that, because you can invoke them to do stuff that don't need to be done.
No, not to mention you're also incurring potential for a lawsuit there. That's assault with bodily fluid. No, I am perfectly okay with the use of this in the context of this story. It is crossing a line when a wrestler does something like that to a fan.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're no ordinary fan?
Doesn't matter. Unless the fan is a wrestler that everybody knows.
What were you saying, Harry?
Unless it's a plant.
Yeah, this is a plant.
All right, fair enough. Getting back to this match, the number one theme that the crowd... Do I know what the crowd was really actually trying to legitimately chant after the low blow?
Sure.
It's good. Because, my God, that kick. People were trying to say, it's good. Or Robbie Gold.
I mean, to be fair, the Bears haven't had a relevant kicker in years, so...
Okay.
I take a shot at the Bears.
Yeah, they suck. And I'm saying that as a Bears fan. Anyway. And then also... Yes, the crowd was disappointed that the table didn't break on 2 attempts. And I'm pretty sure that if Christian wasn't nearly dead, Orton probably was going to take a third attempt at an RKO to go through that table. But this was coming at a point where I believe it would be somewhere in the ballpark of about 4-year span where Randy Orton could not break a table with an RKO to save his damn life.
Well, you know what it was. That announce table was actually imported from Japan.
It had to have been. It absolutely had to have been. Very, very, very breaky pieces. So that's where I mostly feel bad for Christian, because he had to eat that table twice and it didn't break. That's probably where I felt the worst for Christian. But as you said, everything would end up coming to a head and coming to an end 1 month later in was it No Holds Barred or was it a street fight? I think it was No Holds Barred.
I believe it was No Holds Barred. I remember the finish with the RKO on the ring steps.
Yeah. And Randy Orton would finally put an end to Christian, and Christian would be out of the main event title scene, pretty much.
More or less. Actually, one thing I did want to also say here, and I'm going to kind of touch on this a little bit further, is you notice the common theme of all these matches that we're discussing, with the exception of one, has been that it's always building towards something later on, being later on in the night, later on Raw, later on SummerSlam, going forward to TLC, Night of Champions, what have you there. And that's an art form that I think the company loses a lot of the time, in that you can still build towards future booking without sacrificing the present booking.
And if you really want to go really, really far, the main event would kind of end up going towards booking that's still going on today. And yes, I'll explain.
I'm listening.
Shall we? Well, we'll get to it after we get to
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there is this other match that we still have to cover that we haven't gotten a hold of yet. All right, Mr. Garmer, I'm going to let you go first here. Your main event, John Cena defends the WWE Heavyweight Championship against the interloper, I guess you could say at this point, because his contract was due to expire about 2 hours and 15 minutes after this match started, CM Punk.
I believe it was midnight Eastern, so it was actually roughly an hour 45 minutes. It would have expired.
I don't think this match started late.
Actually,
No,
yeah,
Cole said it was an hour
45
and 15 when the match ended.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah, because the pay-per-view went off the air at about 10:47, because pretty much around this time frame you could set your watch by the time pay-per-views were going off at the air.
And it would have been 45 almost exact every time.
Yeah. This is awesome. I mean, good Lord. I think other than Sean and Taker, since then, I don't think we've had this many kicking out of things in a match. I mean, this was insane. Like, how many times you thought it could be over and it wasn't. And, I mean, the STF spot where he pulls him back to the middle of the ring, the second AA, I mean, just Punk doing the first go to sleep. I mean, normally I would complain that I hated that it basically was a distraction finish the way CM Punk won, but it plays into the story of basically Vince screwed himself by coming out there in the first place, and then he distracted Cena. So this was, I mean, 5 stars as you can get. Wonderful match, just wonderful story, all capitalized well. I mean, the crowd makes it wonderful. The commentary is bullshit, but other than the commentary, you know,
I'm so glad I didn't have to deal with the commentary being there live.
Well, I couldn't hear the commentary watching it live either, because we were all talking amongst ourselves, and that's kind of a recurring theme whenever the group of us get together for the pay-per-view. But no, the thing that I wanted to touch on that Sean just mentioned there is the way that the match comes to an end. And for those of you who don't know, if you don't know, obviously you owe it to yourself to watch this pay-per-view at least once anyways, regardless on your personal feelings about how Punk is and isn't viewed in regards to the world of professional wrestling anymore anyway. That said, the finish where Vince comes out and then goes to Montreal Punk while Cena has the STFU locked in, and Cena himself rolls out to the floor and blasts Johnny Laurinaitis before Laurinaitis was a named character. I think this was right around the time that Laurinaitis became a television character permanently. It's right around.
I don't think it wouldn't be for a couple more months.
I agree. Yeah, it wasn't for a couple more months.
Well, this was the beginning of him having an increased television
we
presence.
knew who he was, and they made a point of him on commentary. Like, you know. So that in that way, it's true.
Well, anyways, back to the point there, though. I like, as Sean said there, the Vince screws himself booking here of them attempting to Punk Montreal, or them attempting to Montreal Punk, excuse me. by having Laurinaitis come towards the ringside and ring the bell, but then you have Cena rolling out because he's a man of integrity and stopping Laurinaitis himself and then coming right back into the ring, right back in to go to sleep for the finish there. It tells an interesting story. In addition, we have to talk about what happens after the match. But first I want to get a live in the match perspective from Patrick as far as what he thought during the course of the match. And then we'll talk about the post-match shenanigans.
Yes, this was Chicago. Yes, it was a Chicago boy in the main event, with all the hoopla and everything. But this was another one that going into this match because of, who he's facing, that you almost could have put money down. Punk was not going to walk out with this match, with the belt. It was either going to be that or what would happen after the match would happen, except Punk would lose.
That was my thought originally.
Yeah, and I don't even know that this is something that I've actually even told you, Harry. It's that in line for this pay-per-view, that going into the arena, as dumb as it sounds, I can verify it's legit. I called the finish. I 100% called the finish almost to a T. I'll get to that in a second. But like the sign said, and it was only the second time that you would ever see that sign. Even one they write. And maybe not as bad as it would have been if Cena walked out with the belt at One Night Stand 06, but stuff would have gone down if Cena walked out with that belt. Because the crowd would have absolutely none of it.
Not to mention it ruins the story you were trying to tell.
Kind of. Because here's the thing, though. You still have to remember, technically, Punk's still part of Nexus.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a lot of people forget. Punk still, if I'm not mistaken, Punk still had the Nexus armband on.
Yeah,
and had a Nexus. Go ahead.
The nameplate said Nexus. Remember?
Yeah. So, this was kind of a weird situation where it's like he's on his own, but he's still part of this group. Obviously, going from this point on, pretty much, him and the Nexus will be gone. But you could tell that something special was going to happen when they created, and this may have been, it was either the first or the second time that they had created a commemorative shirt. It was only sold on this night. They only printed 5,000. They sold out less than an hour into the show. Obviously, everyone knows it now because they would do a reprint of it, a slightly edited reprint, that being the black, white, red Chicago flag one, the Best in the World shirt. The one that was printed for that pay-per-view that night is a different version from the one that would go on to be sold because it also includes Chicago and the date. When you saw that, it's like, okay, they're kind of putting a big deal into this. You almost wondered, could something happen? And actually, I'm not even kidding, because I was an hour and a half after the show started, I went to buy a shirt, and everyone was sold out. 2 days later, they'd be on eBay for $250 a pop, and people were buying them. It was insane. But that crowd was one-sided. Eventually, some Cena fans would kind of be heard later in the match, but that crowd was almost as one-sided as you could get. And the crowd was already nuclear, and then Vince McMahon and the Executive Vice President of Talent Relations and former General Manager of both SmackDown and Raw, Mr. John Laurinaitis, make their appearance. Ow, that hurt. And then just the complete, and I hate using this word because it's a stupid word, but the complete jubilation of Punk actually winning, do you know the one problem that we ran into? You guys both remember when Vince orders Alberto Del Rio come out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was just about to get that.
Okay. Then I'll save my comment for after it then, Harry.
Yeah, the post-match shenanigans that I am referring to is that after Punk successfully pinned Cena after a second go-to-sleep, I mentioned the fact that it was go-to-sleep, there was no cover after the original go-to-sleep because I do believe Cena rolled out to the floor off of it.
He also only caught him in the chest. He didn't catch him in the head.
Anywho, so after the second go-to-sleep and the pinfall finish comes down and the Chicago crowd goes ballistic, you have Vince McMahon run over to the commentary table and use the commentary headset to yell to the back, "Quick, send Del Rio out here." And then that's what leads to... does he get music or not? I don't remember.
No.
I don't believe he does.
No, which makes everything incredibly awkward as hell in the crowd. Because, like you said, he does this on a commentary mic. He doesn't do it on a house mic. So we don't know what the hell's going on. We're all just celebrating Punk winning championship while we're watching Vince go completely ballistic on a commentary headset.
Now, I have a question. Wouldn't they have showed Vince on the Titantron doing this, though?
Yes, because well, you know this, the Titantron is generally very close to the live feed.
Yes, the live feed for the pay-per-view, that's what I thought.
But I believe it was either the logo or they did show Vince going ballistic. It was one or the other. So Vince gets on the commentary mic. Like I said, if you're in the crowd, though, unless you're, like, within probably 20 feet of him, you don't know what the hell's going on because you can't hear him. I was in the upper deck. I couldn't hear a damn thing, aside from chants of CM Punk, and maybe a few holy you-know-what chants. And then, Alberto Del Rio ends up coming out with the briefcase in hand and is going to cash it in until CM Punk hits Del Rio with a right hand if you're Michael Cole.
Or a roundhouse kick if you're a normal wrestling fan.
Or just a wrestling fan. I think he said right hand.
It was a Tajiri-style roundhouse kick.
Yeah. Oh, no. I know what it was. I know it was an absolutely gorgeous roundhouse kick. But, of course, Michael Cole, being Michael Cole, he also called a triangle choke and Anaconda Vice during the match. So you can probably tell the quality of the commentary we're getting.
And somehow two of the three commentators from this show still have jobs today.
One of which is the lead commentator. Well, he's already the lead commentator at this point. Anyway, so CM Punk knocks out Del Rio and decides, I'm not going up the ramp. I'm going through the crowd. And it's weird. And I wish I could have rewatched it just for that moment. Probably the second biggest pop of the night. After Punk wins. Okay, third biggest, because you have his intro, then you have him winning. Probably the third biggest one is when he throws his leg over the guardrail and goes to blow the kiss to Vince, what some fans ended up calling, I think, the long kiss goodnight, for some weird reason. But when he goes to throw his leg over and the crowd realizes what he's doing, they once again go completely ballistic. And then you have the show ending with him at the top of the stairs right at the entranceway to the section, holding the belt up, and that's how we would, finish. And from there, the crowd probably would keep going for almost another, at least 5, maybe as much as 10 more minutes of just going completely ballistic. And then as you left, the crowd was going ballistic while in the parking lot. Like this, it was insane. the only other time I've ever seen a crowd react like this for this long, even after a show, was Daniel Bryan winning the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 30. And it was completely insane. And then, you would get the pictures afterwards of Punk with the championship in his refrigerator. And, I mean, should we kind of get to what happens after now?
I mean, I want to go ahead and give Sean Sean and myself a chance to comment on the aftermath first, and then we can talk about the fallout. Sure.
All right.
Sean.
Yeah.
Obviously, you read all about this when you were originally when you were just following the product online there. You mentioned that watching the pay-per-view for this show was the first time that you've ever seen this pay-per-view in full. Mm-hmm. Give me a historical perspective now with 5 years on from the night it happening. Does that moment still resonate to you the same way that it would have done to wrestling fans back then?
Oh yeah, it still feels like a big moment. Still feels like that huge career-making moment for him. I mean, the one thing that was actually good about the commentary is they kept putting over how much of a big deal this was that Punk walk out with the title if Cena doesn't win and all this stuff, and so so it still feels big. Even watching it now, you're like, oh man, this was a huge deal. This was a big deal, and especially considering like knowing all the history with Vince, where he's seen this happen before, and this is why he never pushed people that didn't have contracts, let alone get people the title. This is that same reason why Brett wasn't supposed to be getting the title, why he did the screw job in the first place, all that stuff. I mean, when you look at it in that context, it's still big to me. So I don't think it loses any of its luster, even though they kind of mess it up when you get past this pay-per-view. But it just kind of makes you think, oh man, if they would have done everything right, how much bigger he could have been, and maybe things don't go so sour.
All right, let's talk about we'll talk about the fallout here in just a few seconds. I wanted to touch on the exact thing that you just talked about there in regards to the felt like a big moment. And I'm going to once again directly quote from the review by J.D. Dunn from 411 Mania of Money in the Bank 2011. Recap of CM Punk's tirades about not being appreciated by WWE management. This is before the match. Well, in fairness to Punk's point, the poster for this show features Big Show and Hornswoggle. Just for kicks, I went back and read what I wrote upon Punk's debut in ECW 2.0, or as I've affectionately come to call it, WWECW. Punk's real contribution will come as a character, not as a wrestler. I think that's true. His cashing in on Edge, the happy birthday promo with Rey Mysterio and Aaliyah, and the Doofus son-in-law promos are probably more memorable than any match that he had in the company. JD is exactly right here. Even if this match wouldn't have been the classic that it ended up becoming, and I've seen different people put it at 5 stars, I've seen different people put it at 4.5. Regardless of where you put it, this is one of the greatest main events in WWE history for sheer emotion, let alone actual physicality. The important part here is the way that Punk plays the character during the course of this match. The desperation to get that title onto himself and to have that bargaining chip. To be able to stick it to Vince, to stick it to Laurinaitis, and to a lesser extent, to stick it to Cena. By saying that, given the opportunity, look what I did. And that's the final image you get on this pay-per-view of him standing in the crowd, holding the title aloft, surrounded by his fellow Chicagoans. Chicagoanites? What's the word for you guys, sir, Patrick?
Chicagoans.
I was right the first time. All right. It isn't so much about necessarily the match quality. It's about the perspective historically that we got throughout the course of the match, as well as to a lesser extent the way that Punk would be portrayed after the match. And then that takes us to what Patrick wanted to discuss earlier. So now I turn the floor back over to Patrick.
Well, here, let's finish up talking about here before we even talk about what would end up happening after. Obviously, yeah, this would be a huge thing. And the fun fact that I mentioned, I believe, except for the Royal Rumble, this would be the longest regular match for the WWE, I believe, until the Survivor Series match, where it was Team Cena versus Team Authority, which would be 2014. Yeah, that would be Survivor Series 2014.
Sting's debut in the company.
Correct. And it would be the longest one-on-one match in the WWE until the Rollins-Ambrose ladder match, coincidentally, at Money in the Bank 2015. Because this would occur after, I believe, this match would have been after the classic that Undertaker and Shawn Michaels would have, but the longest that one was just a shade over a half hour. This one, as you mentioned, was somewhere in the ballpark of 33:40 to 33:45, depending on who you ask.
I do believe the official match time I announced, the one that I have written down, is 33:43.
Yeah. So,
the Undertaker Shawn, just real quick, the Undertaker Shawn Michaels match you mentioned is 30 minutes and 51 seconds.
Okay, WrestleMania 25, that one.
Yeah, the first of the two.
So, but I totally understand what both you're saying and what JP was saying in that, because while CM Punk would have good matches, he would never fully have the memorable, oh my God, you have to see this, this is one of the greatest matches of all time type matches, pretty much until here. This would kind of be first, and then it would almost make it a thing of trying to prove that he could do it and being the best in the world. He would do it here, and in reality, he really wouldn't have too many of those types of matches. You could argue his street fight against Jericho, also, ironically, in Chicago, would be the next Chicago pay-per-view, Extreme Rules 2012. Possibly his WrestleMania match against Jericho and his WrestleMania match against Undertaker. Other than that, there aren't really too many matches.
I disagree. I just real quick, I disagree. If we're talking actual matches, I think this one is looked at, and I think that the street fight against Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam is looked at. I don't believe that the two Jericho matches are in the consideration, and I say this as a guy who's a big fan of both Punk and Jericho, and even I thought those matches were kind of disappointing.
I honestly cannot even believe, because that's probably
I really liked that one.
Was
it Extreme Rules?
Yeah,
I love that one at Extreme
the street
Rules.
fight.
I remember loving that match.
I was there live for too. It's honestly, even over this, that may be my favorite CM Punk. But yeah, so you could probably boil it down to three: this one, the Jericho street fight, and the Brock Lesnar street fight, which I absolutely love that match. But you're right. Punk is more for talking. You know, you've got the whole, still like
well, and he had that, are you talking about only on pay-per-view? Because he had that match with Cena on Raw.
The one to go to WrestleMania?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one too. That was a good match, although the crowd kind of kills that one. But, yeah, he's absolutely a talker. There were times where I actually prefer different commentary. So, yeah, I can absolutely see what you guys are saying about him being more of a character than a wrestler. Now, getting back to this. So, unofficially, you call this the start of Summer of Punk 2. And they would essentially have it all blow up in their faces in about 5 weeks. If even that long. So, we then go to the next night. Remember the stipulations. Well, there was really only one stipulation aside from being for the title. And it was, if John Cena lost, he was going to be fired. So we go to to Raw the next night. Vince brings out Cena, and yeah, does Cena get fired? Of course he doesn't. He's John freaking Cena. He might be the only guy that has gotten out of more firings than I know. Who would end up being fired but Vince McMahon? Who would fire him? Triple H. In what is essentially the first time that we would have corporate Triple H, which we still kind of have now, 5 years later. Mr. Helmsley?
Did he have the short hair when he came out for that segment? I don't remember him having the short hair.
No, I don't think he does yet. I don't think he has it until this match against Brock at WrestleMania 28. So that would have been a year and a half still.
Because I always associate...
Just letting y'all know, we are nowhere near 2 hours. We're an hour and a half.
Okay.
I could have sworn we started at like 8:30. Okay. I thought we started at 8:30, but all right. No, it's cool. Hey, we're burning right through this show. It's cool. We do still have a big finish to come. We do still have a big finish to come, and I'm sure it'll be an extended one. Let's talk a little bit about the fallout for this show here. Let's talk about the road to SummerSlam there, and then the bringing into this storyline of Triple H, of Kevin Nash, and of Alberto Del Rio, which I kind of think killed the momentum on the overall thing, on the overallness for the whole storyline. Punk would eventually, Punk would eventually come out of this whole thing with the heavyweight title and would hold on to that heavyweight title from, I want to say, Survivor Series 2011 until Royal Rumble 2013, setting a modern-day record for longest title reign. 430-something days, I think it was 438. I want to say the actual number was, I do believe. But anyway.
No, it was 434.
I was close. Anyways. So Punk would eventually come out of this with the main event spot that he so desperately coveted at this time, although a good portion of the momentum as the voice of the voiceless, the man of the people, was gone due to having to deal with the likes of Triple H around his character, of Kevin Nash around his character, and to a lesser extent of Miz and R-Truth, his awesome truth around the character.
True. You could almost say, though, is that while Punk would get his momentum back in time for Survivor Series, you could say that Punk's momentum died, buried, pardon the pun, at Night of Champions. And then it would take him pretty much from September, October, and November to even get a small dose of that momentum back, because they just shot themselves in the foot almost as bad as you possibly can. So, okay. The next night, with the current champion now sitting at home, they announced that there will be a tournament. It was supposed to be a one-night tournament. And the finals, I believe, would end up being Rey Mysterio versus The Miz. However, Vince comes out for the segment to fire Cena, or Vince comes out during the final and says, we'll have this match to kick off Raw next week. Cena, get your ass out here, pretty much. And goes to fire him, only to be fired himself by Triple H.
Well, not so much fired as relieved of his duties by the brass.
Fired by Triple H. Triple H was the one who actually said it, so he was fired by Triple H. Anyway, so we go to 1 week later then. We would get that championship match. Rey Mysterio would end up winning, only to be challenged by John Cena at the end of the night for some strange reason. Guess who wins? Come on, I'll give you 2 guesses. Okay. I was going to say, I'll give you 2 guesses. So John Cena becomes the champion because reasons. So the status quo was maintained 2 weeks after the status quo changed. Only to have only to have his celebration interrupted by some very strange music.
Well, strange at the time.
Well, yeah, strange at the time. Strange to those that had watched Ring of Honor, I should say.
Yeah.
Because
For those of us,
interrupted. Or, go ahead.
just going to say, for those of us who had watched Ring of Honor, as soon as the first note of Cult of Personality hits, we knew exactly what it meant.
So basically, Ring of Honor fans had about a 30-second advantage knowing who was coming out. Who would come out? The still WWE champion, CM Punk. So his leave of absence from the WWE legitimately lasted all of 8 days. What would he do those 8 days? He would put the belt in his refrigerator. He would go to a cup game during Raw, and then he, for those that don't know, would show up to the Berwyn Eagle Club at AEW Stars and Stripes to help Cole Cabana put over Gregory Iron. If you don't know Gregory Iron, I know Harry's not a fan of him. He's a wrestler who actually wrestles despite having cerebral palsy. I think. So, and he would put him over, and then legitimately 3 days later, he would show back up on Raw to lead to what was now a champion versus champion match at SummerSlam. Do you want to know why CM Punk's momentum essentially died at SummerSlam? He would win. He would win despite a goofy kind of finish where Cena's foot was on the rope, but Triple H didn't see it. He would then be jumped by Kevin Nash. Honk! 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 OMG, Kevin Nash thought he was dead, LOL.
Thanks, Shailene.
He would be powerbombed by Kevin Nash. Del Rio would cash in. Del Rio becomes the WWE champion. Because reasons.
And you know what the saddest part about that would be? The very next pay-per-view, which I do believe is the aforementioned Night of Champions, it's Cena who gets the title shot against Del Rio. Punk is in a tag match with Triple H. Actually, Punk might be in a singles match against Triple H.
I was going to say, I think this was Punk was in a singles match. He was in a no-holds-barred match, I think.
The one was the Awesome Truth tag match. I thought that was on pay-per-view, too.
Well, there is a pay-per-view between Night of Champions and
Hell in a Cell.
Hang on, I'm looking.
I'm going back to my DVD list as well, because I know I've watched all these shows. Sean, do you want to chime in here with anything while we look this up?
Nope. Triple H versus Punk was Night of Champions. It was the no disqualification match.
The tag team match was at Vengeance in between Hell in a Cell and Survivor Series.
Yeah. Where you also had the collapsing ring.
Yes. And in addition, you also had the Cena versus the Del Rio in the Broken Ring. Repadoo.
Correct. So so basically this whole thing turns into a complete cluster and a half. This was partially supposed to lead to a Punk versus Triple H, which we would get. This was also supposed to lead to Punk versus Kevin Nash, which we never got. Gee, I wonder why. Supposedly Kevin Nash got injured.
Oh, well, actually, I think Kevin Nash was supposed to face Punk at Vengeance, and then he failed a physical. And then that's what led to the tag match being made, if memory serves.
I thought it was Kevin Nash was supposed to face Punk at Vengeance, but he got injured, a.k.a. he didn't want to lose to Punk, which they pretty much had to have happen. So he just said, "Oh, I'm hurt." I believe it was a back injury.
So what you're saying is Kevin Nash came down with a bad case of cant jobitis?
Pretty much.
Duly noted.
Yeah, so it would turn into a complete cluster and a half. So, and Triple H kind of putting the kibosh on Vince, you can still see the remnants of today, because this would be essentially the start of corporate Triple H, and that would also still continue to lead to the Authority, which we still have the remnants of even today, with Stephanie mostly.
All right, I'm just going to take this opportunity that if you've been listening along to the show, and even if you haven't and you're listening in the archive, you owe it to yourself to go to the Wrestling to the Max Facebook page. Jason Kunkel has been listening into the show and has been giving you a graphic illustration of everything that we've been discussing throughout the entire course of the evening, and it's frankly hysterical.
Namely, he's taking pictures of action figures, magazines, and pretty much anything he sells in his store. Where's that store again?
We'll talk more about the Madhouse Toy Chest once we're done with the big finish. This would be the part where you post a link to the Madhouse Toy Chest, Jay.
All right.
Anywho. Sean, do you have anything to add to the fallout of this year, or are you ready to move on to our big finish, sir?
They obviously botched it. I think they tried to have, like, the commentators for the Cubs, when he showed up at a Cubs game, like, mention him, and then they mentioned that wrestling's fake and that he was too small to be a world champion and stuff, and it's like, wow, you can already tell the common people are not caring much about this. It's just, I don't know, I think Vince also overreacted to the ratings not being great, and that's when you started getting all the meddling, and he started backtracking on what he wanted to do with Punk, and so, once you have Cena win the other title, and you have a bunch of mid-card guys fighting in that tournament that nobody cares about except for, like, Mysterio, it's like, what the hell are we doing here? Just, even from the word go, and having him come back so quickly was just, good lord, you're not even trying here.
Like, could you not have him come back for a contract signing and just find a way to try and get him to come back and do a contract signing the Raw before SummerSlam?
Yeah, it needed to go on longer. It needed to go on for maybe even past SummerSlam. Like, just,
My honest suggestion, my honest thought when this whole thing went down was, and being as familiar with the Summer of Punk as I am, I own every single show from the Summer of Punk on DVD. Patrick, you need to get on that, by the way.
Yeah.
I think the perfect place to bring him back would have been at SummerSlam itself, right after Cena defended the title in the main event of SummerSlam against somebody, possibly in a return match with Mysterio.
Well, that would make sense. But also, at the same time, have Punk continue what he was doing for that week, where he's making appearances elsewhere. Hell, try and convince ROH to let him make an appearance. Do a morning show or two or something. Just continue to make appearances. It would still, build up to everything. But have him continue saying, I'm not showing up. I'm not going to show up there. I'm doing this instead. Or like he did with the Raw the night after Money in the Bank, where he's taking pictures with the championship belt on the Cubs on Deck circle at Wrigley Field. Do things like that for a month, at least a month, and then maybe for either SummerSlam or the Raw before SummerSlam, you have him post a picture backstage.
Well, didn't he on the night he returned on Raw, didn't he originally Instagram a photo of him backstage visiting friends?
Possibly.
I seem to remember that happening.
That's a possibility. But yeah, it seemed like they had a guy with all the momentum in the world, and then they really didn't know what to do with it.
Gee, We've heard that story before. Hello, Damian Sandow.
There's a lot of people you could say hello to. Hello, Cody Rhodes, after he and his brother beat the Shield.
Zack Ryder.
Mark Henry.
Well, I actually think they did pretty decent with Henry. And it is ironic that you mentioned Mark Henry's promo on John Cena. It led into another Money in the Bank, 2013.
Yeah, so, wow, they dropped the ball. What do you know? Anyway, shall we,
Unfortunately, that's kind of looking forward. I think at present time, it's time to focus on what we're discussing right now. And that takes us into the big finish.
You know, I don't think it's even going to be worthwhile to do a best and worst match. Because I think all three of us, our grandmothers, our dads, and probably our third cousins twice removed could have both agreed, and we can all agree on both the best and worst match of this show.
All right, let's make this interesting then. You ready?
I know where you're going with this.
Sean, what's your second best match on the show?
Christian and Orton.
Patrick?
SmackDown Money in the Bank.
SmackDown Money in the Bank for me as well.
And I don't mean to say that knocking Christian and Orton. That was a good match. I just think the SmackDown Money in the Bank match was better.
Oh, no, I absolutely love the story that Christian and Orton tell, but I'm definitely much more of a fan of the balls-to-the-wall action that we got from the SmackDown Money in the Bank ladder match. But that's all, folks. All right, how about this? How about your second least favorite match on the show? Obviously, we're all going to agree that Kelly and Brie is the worst. What's your second worst, Patrick?
Henry and Big Show seems pretty simple.
Yeah, I was going to say you may have to make it third worst, just because while it did have a point, when you look at all the matches on this card, you still have to go with Mark Henry and Big Show, even though it does play into the future.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm afraid I have to agree here. I think I have to go with Henry and Big Show as well, just due to the fact that everything else on the card kind of stands out for its own reasons.
So, I mean, yeah, it would pretty much just be a toss-up, to fill in the final three spots between SmackDown Money in the Bank, Raw Money in the Bank, and Christian and Orton, and those three we would probably disagree on the order we put them, but I don't think we want to go that far with ranking all of the matches here.
All right, well then let's do something interesting for the Facebook page then, Patrick.
Okay.
And Sean, you're welcome to do this as well. Let's actually rank the 6 matches in order on the Facebook page. Where can they find that Facebook page in order to get our rankings?
They can find it at facebook.com/Wrestling Unwrapped. I don't think we'll be able to fit it. I don't think we'll be able to fit it on our Twitter though, at WU Off the Shelf, of course.
Well, it'll get shortened, obviously.
But what we could do is we could tweet the link to the Facebook page that has the results.
Yes, we can.
Sean, you're welcome to chime in on the Facebook page as well.
All right.
I believe I do have you so that you can post on it.
Okay.
All right, Patrick, let's go into the rest of the big finish that we do have some discussion created within.
Yes, we do. Oh, I thought you were going to leave this since you played for the best and worst.
Oh, no, I just had an idea in order or how to mix up best and worst since we all agreed on the best and the worst. I just figured I'd run with my idea there. No, the big finish is usually your gimmick, by all means.
Okay. Well, in that case, as we always do, cash and trash for this show, Harry, why don't we start with a negative here? So what's your trash for this?
Match placing.
And it goes back to what I said earlier about that Henry Big Show match. I think if you'd have put that match on immediately after the Money in the Bank match rather than after K2 and Bree, the fan reactions to that match would have given Mark Henry much more of the superstar vibe that he needed going into what would be, up to that point, the biggest push of his career. Sean, what's your trash for Money in the Bank 2011?
The commentary was horrible.
Yeah.
Michael Cole doing the stupid heel gimmick was about the worst thing they ever decided to do. It took away from shows. It was never a good idea. And just the whole trolling of Daniel Bryan, the whole, just hard on he had with the hard on with the Miz, it was just really, really off-putting and doesn't make you want to pay attention to the match. It almost wants to make you watch matches on mute, which you really don't want to do because then it takes the crowd out of it, and the crowd was awesome for this.
Patrick?
Damn it. Sean took mine.
We can have the same one.
Yeah, we're going to have to just because it was...
Declare it as the ultimate trash of the show,
Yeah, it kind of was. But for me, I'm not going to go with the whole show. I'm going to go specifically just the main event. Because, while yes, Punk was technically leaving, Cena was saying the company died. But the commentary ended up being so one-sided that it made me glad that I was actually there. Because of the fact that I would not have had to hear Booker T, Gary Lawler, and Michael Cole, just like all the time, like when Cena would put the STF on the Punk, and Michael Cole saying, "Tap out, Punk, tap out, tap out," as if just being a one-sided company guy, or yelling for John Cena to kick out. Just whatever Punk had to involve, it definitely took away from the match. And I think there's still a way that you can be kind of the company guy, but not be completely one-sided. But it almost seems like Michael Cole had to do it to offset the crowd because of the fact that the crowd was so one-sided. But even still, there's a reason for that. It's still the man's hometown, technically. So yeah, the commentary for me was absolutely horrendous for the main event. Alrighty. So now we've got that out of the way. Harry, what's your cash for this? What's the good you can take out of this?
I kind of gave it away a little bit earlier in the show, but I guess I can expand upon it here. It's actually the booking, and that goes for the entirety of the show with one exception. And I would the match. Huh?
The Divas title match?
Exactly. The match that nobody cares about anyways. Daniel Bryan winning the SmackDown Money in the Bank ladder match in a huge upset at the time set the stage for what would be Bryan's title win at TLC and the birth of the Yes movement at WrestleMania 28. Mark Henry winning the match over Big Show the way that he did set up the stage for Mark Henry's Hall of Pain and the biggest run that Mark Henry had in his, at this point, 15-year WWE career. Alberto Del Rio winning the Raw Money in the Bank ladder match, to the surprise of nobody, set up Del Rio's ascension to the hierarchy of the Monday Night Raw roster, and to a lesser extent did set the stage for the better part of the rest of the year pay-per-view-wise, going all the way up to, I do believe, the last match that Del Rio would have for the title would be TLC and the three-way tables, ladders, and chairs match, Punk, Miz, and Del Rio, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. I know it was Punk, Miz, and Del Rio.
Yeah, I want to say that was the main event of TLC.
At one point, Del Rio was supposed to leave. They had it planned to have Del Rio actually win that cash-in. Just saying, imagine if that would have happened. No, I'm talking about winning the title after with his.
Oh, you mean at Money in the Bank?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, that's what I predicted at the time when I did my predictions for this pay-per-view. I said Punk would beat Cena, and then something shady would happen, and Del Rio would pin Punk to win.
Instead, we would get that 1 month later. I think Harry's phone just did 2 hours.
Yeah.
So instead, though, we would get that 1 month later with Kevin Nash's shady dealings of who texted him to sick the winner, and then Del Rio would win it there. So, but yeah, I think the crowd ended. I think the crowd probably would have rioted, honestly, if Del Rio actually cashed his that night and won. So it wouldn't have been the celebration like when Dean Ambrose did it this year.
Oh yeah, no. It would have been like Michael to the Survivor Series '97. Like, get the hell out of there.
Yeah, it would have been a complete cluster and a half. It probably would have been ugly.
Uh-oh. I guess he had to reset his phone.
Oh, lovely. So, so then why don't we switch over then for you,
here we go.
Sean? Okay. You finally Jack Broadhurst?
Yeah, when did I drop?
In the middle of your sentence?
Yeah,
Which
you
one?
were talking about supposedly Del Rio was going to win, and I said instead we would get it 1 month later, but I think you had dropped at that point.
Well, Sean said that Del Rio was allegedly supposed to walk out as champion. I said that was my prediction going into the pay-per-view, that Punk would win the match with Cena. Shenanigans would occur, and then Del Rio would end up pinning Punk to walk out as champion. So I want to give them credit, as well as to my point about the balls of the booking overall for the show, the balls to let Punk walk out as champion. And since I skipped over it in the original talking that I did before you mentioned the whole thing with Del Rio here, I want to give them credit for the way they went with the finish on the SmackDown title match as well. Now, generally speaking, I'm not a fan of screwy finishes, specifically disqualification finishes in pay-per-view title matches. But this is one that actually makes perfect sense given Randy Orton's character arc. And to once again take a line from the review by J.D. Dunn on the show here, a good character is defined by weaknesses, not strength. It's perfectly playing off the fact that Orton has a known temper and can be gotten to. And this right here is what allowed what allowed Christian to pick up the win, as shady as it may have been, to win the title. So my overall cash for Money in the Bank 2011 is the booking involved with the show. Don, you're up.
I think, man, that entire thing with Punk and Cena, just the entire thing around it, the way that they had built it up throughout the show, and then the match itself just makes it that this is what you're going to remember from that pay-per-view above everything else. This is why everybody talks about this pay-per-view. It's what, when you go back in the history, this is going to be one of those pay-per-views you're going to remember for a long, long time, past this 5 years that we're talking about it now.
Exactly. So, there's a reason we're talking about it, 1 week short of its 5-year anniversary. So I'm going to take a slightly different approach for my cash. The crowd. This
Gee, that sounds familiar.
But this is kind of a different case. This is not a case of a crowd hijacking the show. This is not a case of, a crowd just wanting to be full of a-holes. This was a crowd that was passionate for what they believed in. And okay, I'll preface and say this, yes, maybe I do have a little bit of bias being there. But even taking the bias aside, I would like to think it could be great. the crowd here played along somewhat. Sure, technically, Cena's supposed to be the good guy, Punk's the bad guy. But were you really going to buy that? Were you going to buy the crowd booing CM Punk in his hometown, especially with all the momentum he has had since dropping the pipe bomb, which we haven't even mentioned at all tonight? Excuse me. We haven't even mentioned that at all. With all of the momentum and everything, would you really have bought the crowd still booing? A hometown crowd booing Punk? No, you wouldn't have. So in that retrospect, the crowd, you could technically say hijacked the show because they booed Cena and cheered Punk, but that was commonplace by that point. And this was still a crowd that was just playing along with everything. This wasn't going to get the grain. This wasn't a crowd that was doing the wave during the boring point in a match like you get now. Or a crowd that was chanting for Michael Cole, JBL, and Jerry Lawler. This was a crowd that was still into the show, but was still ravenous in what they wanted, and they wanted Punk to win the belt. And they would end up getting it. And the only thing you get out of it was, 14,000 people cheering in unison. You got nothing bad out of this crowd. You got the crowd playing along to the storylines like you kind of expected them to, but they didn't do anything bad. So I do give the crowd credit, because imagine if they had a situation like the Punk Cena match now. And if there was even a single slow point, the way crowds are now, they would have just ripped everything to shreds, if anything went wrong. So, for me, I still have to say, while completely ravenous, in their love for CM Punk, but I still give the crowd credit. So my cash for this is the crowd. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, Harry?
Did he drop again?
It seems like it.
Oh, boy.
No, I'm still here.
Jesus.
I was quiet. I was letting Patrick finish.
He told you okay like 5 times.
No, he was. Well, you answered first, and then he said okay twice, and then I realized I had my phone on.
You didn't drop. You were muted. May still be muted.
Did you mute yourself again? Oh man, this ending is just killer.
Hopefully,
I think he went off again.
Technical issues, folks. But hopefully that'll all be done by the next time Harry is on, which actually we won't even be on in 2 weeks. We'll be back on at 3. But before we get to our goodbye,
I swear to God, I am so over this f***ing phone.
I was just mentioning the fact that hopefully that'll all be fixed in 3 weeks when you're back on.
Well, yeah, actually, I'll be back in 2 weeks for Battleground. But yeah, my new phone will be here by then.
All right. So
what kind of phone are you getting now? Are you finally getting a smartphone, Harry?
Possibly. I'll let you know what happens when it arrives. Anywho, for those of you who weren't able to join us for our last show, you missed the end of the 1 Point Divide, which was very sad. It was a very emotional moment here on the show for us. And some of us are still a little emotional when we think about it. But somehow, I don't imagine that being a problem with this show. Sean?
Yep.
Technically, you're the third guy around here, so you get to go first here. What's your final score for Money in the Bank 2011?
Oh boy, that's the one thing I really didn't think about. I mean, you've got... Yeah, I'm going to go with a 9. Not actually. I'll go with a 9.5. Because you've got around three. You've got 3 matches that can go anywhere from 3 3/4 to about 4 stars, 4.5, 4 1/4 if for some of them if you really like them. Then you got the 5-star match and Punk and uh, Cena, and it's iconic as far as what it means to the company. This is probably one of the biggest pay-per-views in the company's entire history. Yeah, they completely botched it afterwards, and that kind of maybe hurts the luster a bit. But you got the one bad match with Kelly and Brie, but it's so short it doesn't really matter. And the way they built up everything, for me, that's why I'm going. It climaxed immediately into the big ending that you wanted, and yeah, so that's why I'm going to go with 9.5.
Patrick,
Yes.
when we originally did this show, we both gave it a 10.
Yes, we did.
We've since covered a 10 show on this program. By that I mean WrestleMania X7.
Yes, we have.
As much as I'd like to consider this show to be this generation's version of WrestleMania X7, it's just literally a step behind it. I'm with Sean here. This is a 9.5. It is in that upper echelon of all-time pay-per-views, don't get me wrong. It is that one pay-per-view that if you have 3 hours to kill on any given day, and you put this on, it is a great way to spend those 3 hours. But WrestleMania X7, it's not. Not from historical perspective due to the way that the follow-up was blown, although you could argue the same case could be made for X7. Not for overall match quality, although you could argue the same case for WrestleMania X7 as well. But in the context of everything that was coming to a conclusion,
And I think we just lost him again.
Oh, jeez.
So
He's like, I'm done. I'm done with this. Well, it sucks. He was sitting here explaining his point, but I guess go ahead and give your rating.
I think, I think he was saying, with the fact that more the way the historical significance of WrestleMania X7 kind of plays a bigger part than more historical significance and how everything comes into play after Money in the Bank, with it being a little less botched after WrestleMania X7, aside from Austin's heel turn. You have to remember that this is still kind of a B pay-per-view. This was always meant to kind of be a B pay-per-view. So, while, yes, 1 year ago, Harry and I both did give it I think the new streak lives now, and I would be willing to bump it down a 0.5 point to a 9.5. If you have 4 hours to kill, go watch WrestleMania X7. If you have 3 hours to kill, watch this show. Sure, yes, there's a disqualification finish and a couple of goofy things, but be that as it may, you still have 2/3 of this card being, extremely quality matches, and you have 5 matches out of 6 on this card that have some sort of significance. The only one that really doesn't being the Divas title, but at this point the Divas title meant almost absolutely nothing, and wouldn't for several years again. So, this is a go out of your way to watch WWE show. So, a 9.5 would be easy because, it is just a step behind WrestleMania X7 in terms of, the upper echelon greatest of all time. You could almost say that this is kind of the greatest of the modern era kind of thing, or of the PG era kind of show.
Patrick,
Yes.
When did I drop?
In the middle of your sentence again.
You were talking about the historical significance of X7.
Okay. You were just saying, I heard most of what you said when I called back in, because my phone clearly freaking hates me, and I'm over it to the point that I'm ready to be done with this show for tonight. That being said, I'm going to try to get through the rest of my point real quick, and then I'll let you elaborate. I don't know if you guys heard my rating, and I'd imagine you didn't. I'm actually strong now, and with what Patrick just said there, I cannot in good conscience, having reviewed WrestleMania X7, give this show a 10. Because it's just a step behind WrestleMania X7 in terms of both match quality as well as in terms of overall importance and significance historically. That being said, though, I can give the show a 9.5, and as Patrick said, this is your modern-day X7. This is the show that if you had 3 hours to kill, you'd watch the show, and you will not be disappointed at the way you spent those 3 hours. Although you might want to go get your snack during Kelly and Brie Bella. Just a word to the wise.
Are you still there, Harry?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. Yeah, when you had dropped, I had kind of tried to elaborate on what I thought you were going for. So, but yeah, so we're all in agreement here, though, that this is absolutely a 9.5, and like we said, this and X7. These are two kind of go out of your way to find this. Royal Rumble 2014 is kind of a go out of your way to find this, but for a different reason. That one is just for the crowd hijacking the show and for Ray getting what he doesn't deserve. But that's worth a watch, too. So, be that as it may, I would say we are just about done here with Money in the Bank 2011, and tonight, if there ever was a time that you want to watch it, I'd say watch it next Sunday for its 5th anniversary.
But then be sure you're done in time to listen to Wrestling Unwrapped with Sean Garmer and Patrick Ketza. Speaking of Wrestling Unwrapped is brought to you by the Madhouse Toy Chest. Stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest. The man being silly on the Facebook thread for tonight's episode, Jason Kunkel, actually owns said Madhouse Toy Chest, and if you saw anything there that interested you, you can buy them in the Madhouse Toy Chest. Action figures, DVDs, magazines, T-shirts. I'm pretty sure he probably has a couple other odds and ends as well. Make sure you check out stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest. If you mention you heard this advertisement here on Wrestling Unwrapped, they'll throw in a free gift with your purchase. Hey, I got through the plug without my phone hanging up on me. Go me.
Indeed. Well, you're going to have one more thing to plug, because be sure to join us next week when it is only Sean and I, show to be determined. We're not 100% certain of what it's actually going to be.
I'm currently trying to confirm to make sure it is here. You guys keep talking.
Well, okay. Well, Sean and I will be on our own next week. There will be no Harry. Hopefully you can get through this plug yet again without your phone crapping on of you. But, Harry, why will you be here next week?
Hopefully my phone works for this, because it's a very important cause. I'm taking next week's episode of Wrestling Unwrapped off because I will be the play-by-play voice of Dropkick Diabetes 2. It is a benefit show for Akron Children's Hospital's Department of Endocrinology, which is a fancy way of saying children's diabetes. And all of the proceeds from the show will go to the Akron Children's Hospital Department of Endocrinology. Names such as Rhino and Tommy Dreamer will be a part of this show, in addition to other names known in the independent circuit, such as Joey Vincent Martini, Ryan Burke, Sean Blaze, all people who've made their names here in the northeastern Ohio area, as well as expanding out into the other various places. Patrick, I know you're familiar with Joey Vincent Martini. He used to be a part of the Iron Curtain. He used to be part of the Iron Curtain there in AAW, which is Patrick's home promotion. So, yeah, Dropkick Diabetes 2 is this Sunday
July 17th with a 6 p.m. bell time, and we're looking forward to having a great show and raising a lot of money for a really good cause. Matt Golchick and Kevin Koppel are putting the show on. Matt's son has diabetes, and Kevin lost a friend when he was younger due to the illness, so they decided to get together and put on this joint production in order to help raise money to help combat the disease. And I know this is one that hits close to Patrick as well, because Patrick, as he talked about last week here on the show, has had diabetes since he was a child himself. So I know this is an entity that hits close to home for him.
Indeed. So, and like I said, I thank you for being a part of that, and hopefully you guys do raise a hell of a lot of money for the Department of Endocrinology for Akron Children's Hospital. So, I have a very, very worthy cause there.
All right.
Real quick, real quick before I let you wrap it up, Patrick. Jason wants to point out that you forgot to mention Punk's Comic-Con appearance.
Okay, Jesus. Okay, so during his week off, he went to a Cubs game, put his title belt in the refrigerator, then went to AAW, then showed up to Comic-Con, and then he returned, which I believe it was San Diego Comic-Con. When he interrupted, I think it was a panel with Triple H and Rey Mysterio talking about Mattel action figures. Jesus, they're happy, Jason?
Yeah, it actually was a Triple H. It was a Triple H panel. I know that much. I don't remember the specific focus.
I think it was for Mattel.
Okay, Jason's happy. We move on. Go ahead, Sean. You were saying?
All right. Well, I can confirm that next week we will be doing on the eve of G1 Climax 26 starting the next morning. We will, and I might possibly have a great guest for us too, depending on if this works out. We will be the last time that Tetsuya Naito was favored in a G1 Climax 2000. It was the 2013 version, which is perhaps considered one of the best tournaments ever. We will be looking back at that final show and seeing his first rise to what was supposed to be his stardom on the night before what could be his real rise to stardom that begins on Monday morning on July 18th. So should be an awesome show to watch and review.
Are you thinking Reese for the guest for this show?
Yes.
For those of us who listen to just Wrestling Unwrapped here, we are on the W2M Network, which features the host show Wrestling to the Max. And Tom Reese has been a multiple-time guest on Wrestling to the Max. He is a New Japan expert, and obviously he would be able to lend a much more credible voice than I to a New Japan show. That's for damn sure.
That's assuming that that's who Sean was talking about.
That is who I'm talking about. I'm trying to confirm him right now.
Okay. So yes, be sure to join us. So you have two options next Sunday. Either get your ass to Akron.
Salem.
Sorry, get your ass to Salem for Dropkick Diabetes 2, or keep your asses right here as we talk about the finals of the 2013 G1 Climax, possibly with special guest Tom Reese. Anything else before we leave, guys?
Yes, actually.
Just real quick here. We already know what we're doing next, so we might as well announce it.
Oh.
Are you talking the 31st then?
I would be talking the 31st. Do you remember the show that we discussed? The one that was originally supposed to run today, but then got moved back because of the Dropkick Diabetes show?
That be a certain number 5 of a Canadian company?
It would be. We go to Northern Canadian Wrestling, NCW, as they present Femme Fatales, Episode 5. That will be July 31st here on Wrestling Unwrapped. We will not be with you for July 24th. Instead, we present Wrestling Unwrapped to the max for WWE Battleground 2016.
Hopefully.
I'll be there. I don't know about you, but I will.
I'll be there. But remember, we were supposed to do it for Money in the Bank, and it never happened. So hopefully we'll all be there for Battleground. So you guys got a lot to look forward You got the G1 Climax Final next week, the day after my birthday, Send Money. Then the week after that being Battleground. Then the final show for this month being NCW Femme Fatale number 5, headlined by the International NCW Femme Fatale Championship match. Champion Visto takes on one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, Ayako Hamada. Anything else?
I'm good.
The silence is deafening. Anything else, Sean?
Listen to W2M these next 2 shows because, for one, Paul is on vacation to Galveston, so he will not be on. But we will have Tom Reese on to help me preview the G1 that starts next Monday. We'll be doing an A block preview on the Monday night show and a B block preview on the Thursday night show. So, yeah.
Alrighty, so be sure to listen to that. So until next week, when it's only Sean and I. For Harry Broadhurst, our producer Sean Garmer, I'm Patrick Ketza. You have been listening to Wrestling Unwrapped as we cover the 5th anniversary, of the 2011 WWE Money in the Bank pay-per-view here on the W2M Network in partnership with 411mania.com. Some of us will see you next week. Others of us will see you in 3 weeks, 2 weeks for a pay-per-view. See you then, guys.
Waka waka!